Good evening, welcome to Military Strategies. We are live right now, June 5th, 2026. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State of the United States of America, delivers the final blow to the regime in Cuba. It's not just that Donald J. Trump has declared that he will liberate Cuba after Iran. Tonight, just 60 minutes ago, Marco Rubio has just imposed the harshest sanction on the entire oppressive regime of Cuba. Sanctions that will bring financial catastrophe to the communist dictatorial leadership of Cuba. Family. This is Military Strategies, breaking news. We're going to the island of Cuba. Let's begin! Good evening, family. Welcome to Military Strategies. We are live right now. Breaking news, Marco Rubio has just dealt the biggest economic blow to the regime and all its henchmen with some sanctions that we are about to see, which are frightening economic sanctions. Sanctions on individuals. Díaz-Canel is sanctioned. Relatives, friends, partners, companies with ties, international companies, very big international companies. And right now, they have to make the decision. Do we pack our bags and leave Havana? Or the United States? Are they going to shut down our business all over the world? We're live right now talking about military strategies. Plus, we have a video tonight. Very Cuban, very lively. You're going to have a good laugh tonight. Also, because we've got Diosdado too. And it's been months since we've given him a hard time. We have Perez, Petro, Petro's daughter, Maria Elvira Salazar, Marco Rubio, and Donald J. Trump. And everything else that comes up tonight. The night is young. Let's begin. Marco Rubio.
Supported groups, for example,
Cuba.
Cuba has sponsored terrorism and has supported groups, for example.
Cuba has been sponsoring terrorist groups.
Virtually every left-wing, radical, violent...
Every violent, radical leftist group.
Terrorist group in the Western Hemisphere has its...
Terrorist groups from the hemisphere.
At some point relied on support from Cuba.
They have received support and assistance from Cuba.
The ELN, the FARC dissidents, including them, have been involved there. We also know, for example, that Cuba continues to host a...
We also know, furthermore, that Cuba continues to host, or that there is
pretty substantial collection, intelligence sites on behalf of...
There are intelligence collection systems and sites from other countries. We have talked about this here. We have shown it. Russia and have intelligence bases on the island. Marco Rubio is confirming it.
But you look at the region and you look at all of these leftist Marxist...
You look at the region and you see all the marks of this left. Terrorist organizations, he's referring to the FARC, narco dictatorship groups. All of them, in many cases...
All of them, in many cases, got their...
He says many of them are like new men and they're from Cuba.
They are Cubans.
Marco Rubio is already identifying the source of evil here. The origin of evil is not the people of Cuba. This is what they're trying to sell us. Pedro Sanchez, Pablo Iglesias, his wife, the cashier, are trying to sell us this. Irene Montero. I say cashier because she likes to cash in. She likes money. In fact, you can tell by where she lives. But it's not a cheap place. In Galapagar, one of the wealthiest and most exclusive areas in Madrid, where they've set up their shack. Those from the working class town who claimed they'd stay in their neighborhood with the people didn't actually stay. What they did was build themselves a mansion. Typical Cuban, as always. All these people try to sell us the idea that these sanctions and everything that's happening are against the people of Cuba. No, that's not true. It's not against the people of Cuba, but against the leaders of the dictatorial regime. There are no elections or democracy. Nothing. It's been a dictatorship since the Castros took power. Since Che Guevara used to persecute homosexuals back in the... Now it seems like everyone is part of the LGBTI group and that everyone supports sexual freedom. Here on this channel, we do... It's the same in Cuba now, but it used to be different. We all follow trends, but I think everyone should do what they want. What I'm saying is that the communists persecuted religious people of any faith, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and anyone who didn't show love for Stalin. It's all there. The documentation is there. But that's not the point. The point here is that Cuba is already reaching the final point. 66 years. 66 years ago, the United States of America marked Cuba as a national security target. What does that mean? That the island's proximity, its political situation, and the current times we live in put Cuba more than ever in the eye of the hurricane. In the past, it was the crisis of Russian missiles deployed, nuclear missiles deployed just over 100 kilometers from the coast of the United States. Now we're no longer in that situation. Missiles no longer need to be deployed. There are now more dangerous things than missiles. Intelligence. Gathering intelligence, internet cables, communications, communication systems. Everything is tapped with antennas from Russia and China all over the island. High-tech equipment deployed for spying. The United States Central Command and United States Southern Command. The two key pieces of the defense of the United States of America. Well, in Cuba, there are some bases there to listen to what they say, what they talk about, and to decode information. This is what Marco Rubio is saying. Marco Rubio has made additional statements. Now we'll review each sanction individually.
We know that your office is talking to the Castro family.
Maria Elvira Salazar. He says, you have spoken to the Castro family.
And you're sending the message that the game
Le has enviado the message that the game is over.
is over, that they need to open up the democracy.
They must embrace democracy. We know you did it, Marco.
Right? So the question is, what's delaying that process?
The question is, Elvira Salazar is asking here. She says,
the question is, what's delaying that process?
what is delaying this process? Elvira Salazar, also of Cuban descent, wants to understand.
Well, it's not that it's delaying the process.
This is not delaying the process. He says, we have conversations. We have had conversations. Conversations we're having.
Conversations. We
have had diplomatic meetings with the Cubans. Anthony, consistently over time, for many reasons.
Many reasons over
Por muchas
the
razones.
years. In fact,
For years, CITCOM has been there. They discussed the Guantanamo defense line. This is true. The other day, the head of the Southern Command and other generals were talking with the Cuban chiefs about Guantanamo, about the Guantanamo defense line. From the Southern Command, let me correct myself now, Marco Rubio, because I know it was CENTCOM. CENTCOM, as you know, is the Middle East area, the United States Central Command, continent, Mediterranean area. All of that falls under CENTCOM. And he says that during the weekend, Southcom, the Southern Command, has been with them. He says our message has been very clear.
it's very clear. If they want a path in which
If they have a way to recover, do they want to recover their country? And he says, and they have said that we understand that they understand this. And you ask Lazar, and he says, are you saying that they have? No, right? He says they don't understand this.
Ending that. So then
correct.
what?
The Cuban regime doesn't understand that they have to open up to democracy. So what's next? What can we do
in order to
para
make them understand
hacerles entender
that the game is over?
Well, we're
que el juego se ha acabado? And Marco Rubio says, well, they say,
not going to allow them to benefit
we're not going to allow them to benefit from the game,
from the game that they've been playing.
from the game they've been playing, in which they've been stealing money from the Cuban people
And people to the benefit of
para beneficiar in the conglomerate
the conglomerate at the expense of the people of Cuba.
at the expense of the people of Cuba. We're offering to distribute 100 million
Distribute $100 million in
humanitarian aid
aid
But
through
they're not
non-government.
to groups unrelated to the government. And you interrupt him randomly. And he says, but they're not accepting it. Well, he says, now they've said they do accept it.
But they're
But it
creating
has to go
impediments.
through the Catholic Church, and they're not willing.
He says, but this is through the Catholic Church, and they are not willing.
First, we have a whole host
Representative
of
Stein is
organizations that are prepared to do it.
He says, Representative, time is running out to do this. Is there any way we could find out?
Is there any way that we could find another Delcy number?
Rodriguez is the secretary. Teslas. Delcy Rodriguez is there to take notes, obey, and execute. Tercucia. In fact, on the 28th of this month, I think his term officially ends. Desapareció. Espera decir ser juzga. It should end with a call for elections. I don't know. It says President Nicolás Maduro is missing. What? Yeah. No, he's not missing. He's in prison, waiting to be tried. Díaz-Salazar proposes the following. Here, is there any way we can take someone from within the regime? For instance, here are some examples. The crab is the grandson of the one from
Castro. It could be one son.
from the party who has an open mind. I mean, someone who's a little more open-minded. Someone willing to obey US orders. But who knows how to control those radical groups within the Cuban Revolution? Because, of course, here we're talking about the fall of the Cuban Revolution. This isn't the fall of Venezuela or the fall of Nicaragua or the fall of Mexico, of Colombia, of Petro or Bolivia, of Evo Morales. We're talking about Cuba. When we talk about Cuba, we're talking about the epicenter where all these stories come from. That is the epicenter of combative revolutionary communism in the Southern Hemisphere and Central America. And throughout the world, in Africa. Cuba was involved in military conflicts in Africa. It was involved in all the conflicts. There are avenues in Iran with the name of the Cuban leaders. It's also there in Lebanon. Just like Hugo Chavez has his own, and so on. What I mean by this? It is a global reference point. The fall of the regime is not as simple as it might have been, which hasn't been simple either, nor is what's happening in Venezuela. But Salazar, Maria Elvira Salazar proposes this. Is there any way to find a figure like Delcy so that the situation for Cubans starts to improve? Yes.
Following the same example that we have in Venezuela.
Where we have removed Maduro from Venezuela, she says, can we find a similar figure?
Sure, because the grand jury indicted him.
Because the grand jury was looking for him. Why?
And he was in the transnational criminal organization.
And he was on the list of a transnational criminal organization.
Lists. If that were to happen, could we find?
If that's going to happen, if it has happened, can we find one? First of all, a second Delcy.
First of all,
Creo que,
I think that some of the models you want to look at.
he says, some models you're considering in the Czech Republic or in Poland, the two periods of transition.
Poland transitioned out of the, and one of the things
Getacaí hacia el muro. They emerged from repression after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the disintegration of the Soviet Union. That is to say, this has happened before. Mentonte. The thing is, Cuba is the last remnant of the Soviet Union. Really, when the Berlin Wall fell and all the former Soviet republics became independent and started a transition model turning toward the West, Cuba was the only one that didn't. Along with some African countries, each of which follows its own interests, and each has its own story because of issues like mineral trafficking, substances, weapons. Each one has gone its own way, right? But Cuba continues to maintain that secrecy, along with North Korea. Tenga la sociedad viviendo bajo ese estatus. There are places where those old figures from the former Soviet regimes still keep society living under that same system.
Preserve certain institutions in their society in order to provide stability and longevity.
He says, in the Czech Republic and in Poland, this happened to provide stability and longevity.
The project they were in.
Del proyecto que había.
Even
we
in the midst.
understand that there are no institutions.
But we have to understand that there are no institutions in Cuba.
Well, I think you're asking me to identify as there.
Dice, Marco Rubio is wrapping up. He says, you're asking me to identify. Identify. What we're seeing is really nice because both are from the same party. This doesn't happen in Spain. What we're seeing right now, that a representative of the American people who is a Republican is asking, pressuring, also forcefully, pressing hard, the Secretary of State, who is from the Republican Party. This doesn't happen in Spain. But in the United States, the land of freedom, the Republican Party can ask questions to its leaders. I think that's fine. It's fair.
Specific individuals in the Cuban.
He says specific people in the government of Cuba. I think there are maybe technical technocrats. Maybe they're technocrats. Technocrats.
That you could work with.
Maybe you can work with them. And I know that I think it's a little tough and going very high up.
You get higher up because of the
Por su ideología.
ideological bent that some of them have.
Por la mentalidad que tiene muchos. Of course, that's what Marco Rubio is saying here. With the people you can work with in Cuba, and when you go to the highest ranks of the regime, they have an ideology that's convinced of the revolution. So you can't move these people. Rodriguez can be moved since he's just in it for the money. He's not there because he really believes in Maduro, Chavez, or Bolivar. He's there for the money and the lifestyle he has. In Cuba, if you go to a high level, you'll find that they're like mobsters, but they also believe in this ideology they've been taught since they were kids. Notice something. I'm going to show you, while we're watching Marco Rubio with this topic and getting closer to the island, there's something that has really caught my attention in many places. There are these lost centers that are now abandoned. Thank you. They were educational places. This is where the regime carried out brainwashing of the population to turn them into true psychopaths of the most radical communism that exists on Earth. Places that are now abandoned. This all over the island. I repeat, places like these can be found all over the island. Some are still operational. In some of them, supposedly, there are intelligence reports that say experimentation is being done with weapons and with very strange things. Others are even related to trafficking in illicit substances. But the important thing is to understand the mentality of a Cuban generation. A generation had to leave the island, has had to leave the island, and is leaving the island because it can't take it anymore. And another one who did stay there. And the one who stayed there, listen up, friends. Some are staunch supporters of the Cuban Revolution. Others have stayed there because they had no other option. Leaving or escaping Cuba isn't easy. It's a journey that endangers your life. And it's a one-way trip. And it costs even more money. But this can already start to help us understand a bit about the society's vision. It's like a kind of North Korea that's been going downhill fast. And now it's in ruins. It's broken. And pay attention to the videos we're going to show. We have a video of Cuban missiles that's going to make you die laughing. Anti-ship missiles. We're seeing it now. Let's continue with Marco Rubio.
I agree with what you're saying. People that are not.
And yes, I think what you're saying is that there aren't any people.
And I agree with what you're saying. People that are not, their hands are not full of blood.
He says people who don't have blood on their hands. We can consider that possibility to avoid a civil war, instability, and chaos.
Chaos.
I think the United States is open to it.
He says, I think the United States of America is open to negotiate a situation to Cuba on the path to democracy or heading toward democracy.
Towards democracy, prosperity, freedom.
Prosperity, freedom, normalcy.
Normalcy. We would be open to that.
We are open to this. We will work with whoever is open.
We would work with whoever is open to
Is willing or is open to this.
doing it. Obviously, it'll be challenging, and
Obviously, it's going to be a challenge.
that system is all I've said.
That system, as I said, I mean,
Some of these people have committed
those people have been committing for 67 years.
67 years to this viewpoint.
From that point of view, no, it's not going to be easy for them. Para ellos.
Pivot
No,
away
but
from
have
it.
we?
But
We know that very well in our community.
he says we know well in our community. But we are able to identify someone
By someone that could fill that role.
who can fill or who can take that role.
Well, I wouldn't.
Bueno, I'm going to say that. No, I'm not going to say that we've identified someone specifically.
Fight a specific individual
A specific individual who can play that role.
that role. I think there are clearly people within
He says, I think there is clearly a group of technocrat people
the democratic realm of the government
in the government who can play some role.
play some role in all of this, but ultimately,
Ultimately, if you ask me if there is one, a single individual person to put there,
singular individual right now that we would trust and rely
that we are going to trust and can put in charge to lead this transition.
to lead this transition from start to finish.
But from the beginning to the end, I can't share that name now.
Right now,
I understand.
He hasn't said that there isn't one. Pay attention to this. Because what Marco Rubio just said is important. He hasn't denied that they have someone in mind or that there is already a person prepared, selected to take to Cuba from beginning to end to democracy. There's someone, but he doesn't want to say. He says, I understand.
We know that today,
We know it. Now, he says we know that today Raul turns 95 years old, Raul Castro.
turns 95 years old. At 95, you're pretty old, and
95 is very old.
making decisions is very hard.
Making decisions is difficult. We know that the crab, I like how the crab says it. Let's listen to him. I like Maria Elvira's accent.
And making decisions is very hard. We know that El Cangrejo is his grandson,
The crab is his grandson,
younger, 41
is 41 years old.
years old. Don't you think that
Don't you think maybe
are you
it says you've sent him a message? What? To the younger generation to convince Raul in order to make it easy for the island. As you said, let it become like Jamaica.
or Dominican Republic?
Dominican Republic, Taiwan, Singapore, or Hong Kong.
Yeah, I think that there are clearly
See? He says, I think there are clearly individuals in that power apparatus, a country that understands what they have now, right now, is not sustainable. And it needs to be fixed. But they don't have power.
They cannot make
even
decisions.
if they have
He says, even if they have power, they don't know how to do it. Or they don't have enough power.
so much of it has to be consensus built.
Because many things have to be built, honestly.
But there are clearly people that are
Pero claramente hay gente. That's it. Until next time. Understood?
What they have right now is not sustainable.
not sustainable.
We know
They have spoken with the crab. They told the little crab, look, crab, don't throw this. You're not going to go backwards. Crabs walk backwards. It's funny how they move that way. We're going backward. We need to move forward. What does that mean? Very clear. I understand this well. Not sure about everyone in the chat. We're live with many views. Please like. It's important. 6,000 people are here, but we're missing many likes. I want your opinion on what Marco Rubio and Maria Elvira Salazar are saying. I'm very clear on this. They told the crab until now, you've been walking backwards. Either you learn to walk forward, or the island will be gone down the drain. The crab, he must have made a decision. He must have said, look, my grandfather is 97 years old. He's about to kick the bucket. We have to wait. The United States told him, no, we can't wait. So the crab has said, well, it's just that Díaz-Canel is there, which is a problem. And the United States must have said, don't worry about Díaz-Canel. You know a guy named Nicolás Maduro? And Nicolás Maduro, who... He seemed very protected by his army. No.
Behind. Huh? Here. Let's go.
Look at him. He was very protected by him.
And over there, greetings, greetings. Over there, greetings.
Of course. I told you. Do you know what happened to Maduro? No. Just think about what might happen to you. But that's not where it ended. After this conversation, it's here. The nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb with the sanctions. Thank you. Harsh sanctions. Very, very harsh. Harsh. Pay attention to what you're about to see. Now, from Secretary Marco Rubio. It's a nuclear bomb. They've just decapitated the Cuban regime's economy. Please pay attention. Let's play background music. To add some color to this story. Let's watch it. Secretary Rubio. For decades, Cuba has been the world capital of radical left-wing terrorism. The regime in Havana has recruited, trained, and supported violent Marxist and Third World movements throughout our hemisphere and beyond. Today, we are targeting the network that enables the financing of Cuba's subversive and radical operations. In accordance with the authorities of sanctions created by President Trump's historic Cuba executive order, I am designating the following entities. Pay attention to what's coming. First entity. Ministry of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Cuba. MINFAR. Sanctioned Ministry of the Armed Forces. Dos. Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, the ICAP. Regressive, repressive. Apparatus against the Cuban people. 3. Amistud. Cuba. SA. A company. Now you will see what this company does. 4. Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, CDR. The Revolutionary Civil Guerrilla of Cuba. 5. La Victoria Mining Company, SA. That's a huge bombshell. Because it's worth billions. anyone who provides services to these sanctioned actors. She risks being sanctioned herself. Foreign banks and other companies that provide services to these entities must freeze those activities. The Trump administration will no longer tolerate radical Marxist regimes in our hemisphere that seek to threaten the national security of the United States and participate in influence operations to export their poisonous and evil revolution to our country and the rest of the world. Marco Rubio, June 4, 2026, 11:39 at night. What does this mean? Well, let's take it one part at a time. Let's take it one part at a time because it's a complicated topic. Marco Rubio just dealt the when they're at their worst, when they need help the most. He just took them down. What do I mean? Well, pay attention to this. He and his close circle of high-ranking Cuban officials. Companies and organizations linked to the military sector and additional government entities related to security and defense. What is GAISA? And why is it so important? That controls a huge part of the Cuban economy. Tourism, hotels, commerce, services, transportation, strategic real estate. It is estimated that GAISA has direct and indirect influence over a very significant portion of the national economy. What else do these sanctions include? The freezing of assets. If the sanctioned individuals or entities have assets under US jurisdiction, these can be blocked. That means any property, any bank account directly or indirectly related to everything we just mentioned is blocked. Financial restrictions limit access to the international financial system for entities related to those sanctioned. That means, for example, that the company we've mentioned here, Minera La Victoria S.A. or Amistur Cuba S.A., won't be able to carry out economic transactions in the international payment system. Financial restrictions, as we just saw, risk for foreign companies. Any foreign company that does business with sanctioned entities can be exposed to secondary sanctions from the United States. If there is a company that owns a hotel, for example, Melia, it is exposed to sanctions from the United States of America. And they won't like that. In fact, Melia has said that they are leaving. An investor who comes in and wants to buy a hotel or open a tourism business in Cuba under the orders or laws of the regime will be sanctioned immediately. So that investment is already doomed because they won't be able to move the money out of Cuba because they won't. To the international payment system. It's not like you have a card, you go out there and you pay. No, this one doesn't work. Travel restrictions. This is super important. In Estados Unidos, executives, officials, and people linked to sanctioned entities to deal with the restrictions on entering the United States within the organizations we're looking at here. Let's take a look now. The hardest thing for them is the tourism issue, which is completely ruined. But there's a detail. You're going to see this. The company we show here, Amistur Cuba, is the one in charge of financing It's responsible for financing all the little lefties who went there on trips to five-star hotels, taking them around the island, and speaking well of the Cuban regime. The ones from the Cuba flotilla. You remember them, right? And then they were staying at the only hotel that had electricity. Well, that organization is done for. They're not going to fund any more trips for left-wing YouTubers. No, they can pay for it themselves. They make money. They're not exactly broke. Instruments of repression against the people, the Cuban Institute of Friendship, the Ministry of the Armed Forces, the Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, the CDR. But the one from Minera La Victoria, what is that? Well, pay attention to this. News from May 20-20-2026. To understand these things, you have to do your research and see why the United States does this. What is the policy behind that whole story? And why the takeover with that company? Cuba granted Minera La Victoria S.A. a 20-year concession to exploit gold and copper on 752 hectares in Baragua, Ciego de Ávila. That company, the Cuban regime formalized that Wednesday, the day we're talking about, the mining concession, gold and copper processing, and to the Cuban-Australian commercial company, Minera La Victoria, in the area called Nueva Sabana, Baragua Municipality, province of Ciego de Ávila, with a validity period of 20 years. They're going to be stealing the gold, the Cuban people, and the copper. Copper is expensive. Copper is very expensive because copper is used to make the wiring for many infrastructures. For example, the signal cables of the railway system contain copper. Communication systems use copper. It's expensive. Ratified by the Executive Committee of the Council of Ministers of Cuba, the agreement establishes that the validity period of the concession granted is 20 years, extendable in accordance with what is established in Chapter 6. Minera La Victoria S.A. is a Cuban-Australian joint venture between the Cuban state company Geominera S.A. and Antilles Gold Limited, which is listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. Well, now that company, or leaves from the partnership with Cuba, or that company Antilles Gold Limited, it's going to have a serious problem. A very serious one. It's so serious. Just look. The company, Minera La Victoria S.A., I'm going to give you a fact. It's a company profile. This company, it comes millions of workers. What you are hearing started in 1996. It has projects in Chile, in Latin America, outside of Chile, in a bunch of countries. Partnerships with other companies. Headquartered in New York. Among other places, all those companies that have ties with this company, they can be sanctioned. And now who's going to mine the gold? Because with gold, Cuba makes money. No foreign company is going to be able to do it. No. And that's a hard blow. Very hard. That's how much it is. And I don't know how long they're going to last. What has Díaz-Canel said? Because, well, Donald Trump has said this. A statement. I'm not sure if it's about invading Cuba. Something is about to happen. Let's hear from Donald J. Trump.
Of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as soon as that's done on our way back, we'll just make a little brief.
As soon as we make our way back to put an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran, We're going to stop in Cuba.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take care of them.
Them out. Look, we have a lot of people that voted for Trump.
Many people have voted for Trump.
Whether they did or not, it didn't matter. But I had 95% of the Cubans voted
95% of Cuban Americans voted for Trump.
for me. They're unbelievable people.
They are incredible people. They are energetic people.
Entrepreneurial. You know, some of the richest people in Miami,
He says they are among Miami's richest people.
Cuban. They're unbelievable.
He says they are incredible.
And I'm going to take good care of them. I'm going to.
He says, I will treat her very well. He says, I will take good care of them. I will make sure they return to their homeland. They return to their families.
A lot of family over there. They've been treated very badly by
Listen, they have been treated very bad
Cuba.
in Cuba.
But we're going to treat Cuba well. And
We are going to treat Cuba very well. And we are going to allow people to return.
let them invest in Cuba if they
So they can invest in Cuba.
like. So we have some very good plans for Cuba.
So we have very good plans for Cuba.
I think, you know, we have to get rid of the.
He says, I think we have to. No, it's not eliminate. It's remove or discard. The regime was the regime.
The regime was
Al régimen.
very tough.
The regime is quite malevolent. It's nasty.
It says now they don't have money coming in.
He says, now they know there's no money.
They had a lot of money coming in from Venezuela.
He says Venezuela no longer sends much money.
Have any money coming? They had oil coming in. They had money coming in. But we're going to take care of Cuba.
He says, let's take care of Cuba. And people want us to do it. And people really want us to do it. Thank you very much. This is a statement of intent. This is a statement of intent, but also with all the numbers. What's there right now? Well, right now there's an aircraft carrier. Right now, the USS Nimitz is there. Be careful, don't let yourselves be fooled. There's the aircraft carrier and maybe 2 destroyers with it. The 2 destroyers provide support when it's not on a combat mission. But it is. Why? It's very likely that the Nimitz will stay there until another aircraft carrier arrives after wrapping up the Iran situation and joins the strike group on the way back home. What Donald Trump says makes perfect sense. Why would we prepare a deployment when we already have one in the Middle East? We want to finish the Iran issue, and on the way back home we stop by Cuba and liberate it. Epic for the story of Donald J. Trump. It could be support from the Nimitz, for example, in the southern area of Cuba. The support of another aircraft carrier in the northwest area. It could be fatal. Or even, we could be talking about an aircraft carrier with its battle group in this area at the westernmost tip of Cuba, and the other in the area we see here, diagonal across from Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, in this area that we see here. We know the Dominican Republic previously gave up its tanker bases during the Venezuela operation. We also have to keep in mind that in Puerto Rico, the main military installation is operating at 100%, and it's also well equipped, which means the numbers do add up for what we're talking about. Now, we bring in another aircraft carrier to provide security so that if Cuba has drones that try to launch them against the United States as well, none of them get through. That would be catastrophic for the United States of America. If Cuban drones could cross into Miami, into Florida life. But I think it's possible. in the operation. I think it's possible and aiming for those numbers. Will it be a pressure tactic? Yes, it will be a pressure tactic, just like it's doing with Iran. Obviously, Donald J. Trump will want to avoid any operational entry that would lead to a direct conflict with many casualties inside Cuba. He doesn't want to have a bad reputation inside Cuba or seem like a full-scale invasion. But he is willing. Donald J. Trump is ready to restart the operation and free Cuba by any means necessary, but mainly through diplomatic means. That's why in recent days we've been seeing planes and people arriving there to talk with them. First, we speak as gentlemen. This is how things are, gentlemen. You take it, you leave it. We can give you this. You can exile whoever you want from the regime in these countries. No one will go after you. That's what was done with Nicolás Maduro. Offer him a way out, one that's advantageous to avoid trouble, bloodshed, suffering for the Cuban people who already have too much. Overspending on a military operation, that makes no sense. Because Cuba, you'll see now, militarily, it means nothing. But the focus of the civil war, these regimes know very well how to hold on to power. And it's with the threat of a civil. They set the entire city on fire. And this turns into a guerrilla war. Well then, to avoid this, we have to go after the leaders of the regime. That's why they went after Nicolás Maduro. And that's why now they've targeted the secretary, so that she does the work of the United States of America and Venezuela. How are the defense systems anti-ship from Cuba? Because of course, Donald Trump has said when we return, that means the Navy is the one that's going to take care of it. Of the operation in Cuba, mainly. It won't be an attack launched from South Florida toward Cuba. Instead, the Navy will handle this since they already have experience after many months of work. From the Southern Command, in the Caribbean Sea, what does Cuba have? Could Cuba defend against an aircraft carrier? Do they have missiles or weapons for that? We're about to see that in the next video. But honestly, my family, I want to say something. It's really important right now that you leave your likes and your comments. They want to censor the channel. They don't want us discussing these topics, which bothers them. If you'd like, you can help fight censorship so we can keep making content like this. Our lines are open at PayPal.me, Estrategias Militares, and the super chats to collaborate with us. Pay attention to the video. This is real. This is cute. Let's go see. We're going to use our own music because of copyright issues. We prefer that. Let's see. What do we have here? It seems to be a system, a missile system with a radar, naval. Well, radar. Now we'll talk about this. This crew operates the battery and has only one missile loaded. The truck, I imagine they took it there. When Stalin, he was in a wheelchair. There we see the missile launch. Something has happened there. What do we see here? A vehicle with a very old computer. Here's another antiguo de la época soviética, different from the earlier one with a missile loaded on the left. This is an anti-ship missile, very old, from the Soviet era. It's something really huge. Back when defense systems didn't exist, or powerful anti-aircraft batteries to defend ships. Okay? This is basically what we're talking about. Missiles from the Cold War. The radar section, that is the radar signature of that missile you're seeing, it's huge. And what radar, from the moment that's launched, is going to detect it? Because it doesn't have any stealth capability, no system at all. Technologically advanced to avoid or bypass anti-air defenses. or countermeasures. But there's something else that stands out. I want you to pay attention to a detail, because the finale comes next. Pay attention to this detail you'll see right there. Mast, you see, using what's called a radar, it stays still. I want you to look now there. Now the radar is moving. That's the radar you can buy and install on your boat anytime. It's a marine radar to detect ships in the water. That's not a military radar. It doesn't have more information. It doesn't distinguish between targets. The information it gives you is that there's a ship at 15 kilometers, at 10 kilometers. I don't know what range this will have. Also, the way they have it set up there, and they have it set up. The coastal area is visible in the background. I mean, you can see the sea. They have it set up there a little bit inland. It limits you a lot. Because even if that missile has a range of 100, 200 kilometers, or something like that, more or less, if the radar doesn't allow you to detect ships at greater distances, 10 kilometers, you can't do anything. You won't be able to get a radar lock, or you won't be able to send information to the missile. In fact, I think the way they're using this is a mess. If someone thinks that's going to sink an aircraft carrier just because exiled family in Canada will come out, they're mistaken. And the bold guys are going to say, they have a supersonic missile to sink aircraft carriers. Please, please. Watch this channel carefully and understand how this works. What they are using as the primary radar for detecting ships in the water. It's the spinning thing visible from any yacht. Even those on yachts are more advanced. This is from that era. I think they must have taken it from some ship. They probably took it from a ship and put it here. That's to tell you. The ship, or just that there's a ship some kilometers away. So then, what they're going to do is this. That missile will have a radar built in, semi-active, with a very narrow search wave, because it lacks a support radar, sending information to guide it, to find and lock onto the target. What they'll do is fire at the ship's coordinates from the launcher's position. They fire it. Radar is already active as soon as they launch it. And if during the flight, if the missile detects a ship, it will lock on and pursue it. The problem is that it has this. I think so. We should pay attention to something. It's very striking. If someone is getting lost in what I'm explaining, please let me know. Write it to me in the chat. When it comes to strategy, we don't understand anything. We're getting lost. I do it more slowly. I always try to do it in a language that people understand, that it's easy. Let's see. Let's imagine. Let's imagine. This is the scenario I'm going to give you. Now, let's remove filters. This is the map of ships. Okay, here we have them all. These are the coast of Cuba. We're looking here. Let's use this as an example. This is an interesting scenario. Or this one is better. Let's imagine that at a distance of about X, let's use made-up distances since I don't have them here. I know how to measure but don't want to. About 60 kilometers inland from the sea, there's a destroyer from the United States of America. The destroyer is going to be this one we see here. This one we see there, that's our destroyer. The guys from the video, they detected it with that radar. Civilian, they know there's an object there. They think it's the destroyer. They don't have visual confirmation, or maybe they do because they've sent a drone. Maybe it managed to get close enough to distinguish a destroyer of the Arleigh Burke class. All right. They know where it is. They fire the missile. The missile starts to fly out to sea with the radar active. But of course, our destroyer is back there. Before getting there, there's a ship here. Here's another ship. There are two ships here. There are even more. A fourth one. Here. The missile won't be able to tell which one is the target because it doesn't have one. A military radar, that's tracking it, which is this one. Not that one. Not this one. That's why it's a danger to navigation. Similar to what Iran does, which is why Iran often says this. All the ships in the Strait of Hormuz, they should stay 30 or 40 miles away from US military ships. We're going to attack them. To have a clear line of fire with their missiles and be able to reach them without interference from other ships. I think that's been made clear and people understand it. All right. Even if they launch the missile, automatically, the destroyer will detect it. It's going to detect the launch, because I'll say it again. This is a mastodon. This is gigantic. It's enormous. It doesn't make any sense. When A is here, less than halfway, or more than halfway there, the destroyer has launched a missile to intercept, and it's already been shot down. I don't know how many of these missiles it has, but I don't think they have many. What's more, watch the video to see what happens there. It's going to trigger the shot. The missile is fired. The missile spins. The missile goes to shit. Is that clear? It's crazy. It's total incompetence. Of course, why? It's an old missile. It's expired. Missiles expire. This missile too. It has a system. It has a booster. That is, it has a propellant to give it exit velocity. And the booster, which is defective, it makes it fall to the side. That's why the video cuts off, and we don't see what happens. It's crazy. It's crazy. A missile that big can't make a turn like that so close. What's more, it's not made for that kind of maneuver. Normally, what they do is aim with the launcher. That's why the launcher is mobile. It can be rotated. Aim as straight as possible towards the target. They're not high maneuverability missiles. Notice how big it is. Watch what happens. It turns completely and then explodes. It's a disaster. The booster has exploded. This is a failure. It's like the rack marks, but Cuban style. Failure. They must be laughing at the Southern Command about this. When they've seen it, they're saying, let's go tomorrow. We want to go tomorrow. No more, no less. Anyway, what did Díaz-Canel say? Because Díaz-Canel, he must have said something. Canel says the following. The president issues new threats against Cuba, and the Treasury Department adds more leaders' names, Cuban organizations and companies to an illegitimate sanctions list. They are aimed at reinforcing the blockade measures and the conflict scenario between Cuba and the United States. This political blindness is added to the coercive measures applied in recent weeks against our country, designed to harm the Cuban people. The Yankee government's hostility will meet our resolve to resist the imperial onslaught, even in the worst scenarios. He's pulling a Maduro. It's Canel. He's acting like Maduro. He doesn't know what he's getting into. He really doesn't know. Here's another one who doesn't know what he's getting into. It's this guy.
We also warned then that Maria Elvira Salazar received funding from Abelardo de la Espriella and his wife. And on 2 occasions, she had to face complaints from the FC, the Electoral Authority in the United States. We also warned that in that investigation, you pulled on one thread, and we found out that at that time, Espriella was Alex Saag's lawyer, and that with Saag's money, part of Maria Elvira Salazar's 2 campaigns were financed. But at that time, you decided not to name Saag out of revolutionary discipline. At the end of the day, they're all part of the same club of criminals.
Saag is a criminal. The one who was a minister in Venezuela, who is close to Nicolás Maduro, close friend of Nicolás Maduro. And the farewell given, it points to Salazar. Why? Because Salazar is the one who is putting a lot of pressure, so that this story in Cuba ends once and for all. These guys may cooperate with the United States, but they have their own agenda. Thank you. Farewell given. It's going to fall. I'm calling it now. Goodbye. It's going to fall. It's a matter of months, but it's going to fall. For sure, 100%.
Ma'am, she left here from Venezuela for a while. She was coming and going. We're waiting for her and hope she'll arrive soon. She should come during the day. It's scary at night. The lady...
All those mockeries, disrespect, torture, disappearances. What's happening in the helicoid? There hasn't been time to make the program. I want to do it as soon as possible. They took all the prisoners out of the helicoid, but they don't know where they are. They've taken them to several places. I have my theory. I have 2 theories. One is a place in Venezuela. Then I'll explain why I base it on that and say it's this place. They could have taken them to one of the groups of political prisoners. And another one is something we've seen in Iran, for example. And it's the use of apartments or flats where they keep dissidents confined. It's a discreet way, a way that doesn't cause a stir. That's hard to identify. And that prevents there from being maybe a military operation or an attack to free them. Well, I think the Venezuelan regime, advised by the Iranian regime, is using these kinds of techniques against the dissidents. It's an attack. Political hostages. Gustavo Petro. Attention to this news. Diosdado mentioned the tiger. Pay attention to this.
At this hour, it's news. The order from the national government to remove General Eric Rodriguez.
To remove General Eric Rodriguez, because he reports that in the states where the FARC are present, they are patrolling and demanding that people vote in favor of Cepeda. What you are hearing?
The chief of operations of the military forces and the one who is in command of the democracy plan during this electoral process, sources...
During the electoral process, Gustavo Petro removes this general for doing his job, protecting the elections and ensuring they are clean elections. So the FARC can't threaten Colombians, letting them vote freely. This general just secured a position when the tiger takes power. In Colombia, if he actually takes it, because of course, Cepeda says there could be a war.
And what could be the consequence of both models, extrapolated, as I said, in a rather clumsy and simplistic way, which is what we have today in Colombia, which is, for better or worse, a democratic system, one that I believe in and defend deeply. It could really be subject to irreversible damage. That we could have in Colombia a significant increase in human rights violations. And even that, we might reach higher levels of violence.
Threatening that if Tigre wins, there could be a civil war, so that we understand each other. He was talking about Cepeda, about how Tigre uses the Colombia jersey, the Colombian national team jersey. Well, don't laugh too much at this video because you're really going to be blown away by this.
Pedro's crazy moment.
Pedro and his daughter.
Petrus.
And the daughter. Attention when his daughter sees James. James.
In the Cordoba department.
James, can I take a picture of you? And James doesn't pay any damn attention to her.
Heritage.
And Ella's left with a look on her face.
Identity of our Colombians, who with their hands.
James dodges her kiss.
The Department of Cordoba.
James looks at her with his sunglasses. James is a friend of the Tiger.
Cordoba. Heritage and identity.
Our friend is from Tigre. That's it. Her heart was just broken. Petrus's daughter, her heart was just broken. James did it to her. He did the 360 to her. Look at him again.
These are our Colombians with their hands. And a hat.
Look at her face. She's looking at James, the love of her life.
Yeah, Ames, you at James.
Can I take a picture with you? Look at that sad little... From the department. James looks at her with a disgusted face. And he walks away. And that's it. Look at her face as James walks away. She can't believe it. She's in shock. She keeps looking at James. And now she gets angry. Now she's angry. Now she's angry.
Us.
They pulled a Petrus on her big time. What a huge humiliation.
Colombians with their own hands.
Look at her face. She's devastated. She's devastated.
Hat. A hat.
They put a hat on him. But come on. James told him, I'm not taking a picture with you, not even with a sack on my head. Seriously. James glances at her, looks away, and leaves. I think he said no. I think he said no. Well, we have the video of the missile. We have this video too. And keep this in mind, because we'll have to choose. Soon we'll have a competition of the best Cuban videos. We have the videos of the special forces, we have the training ones of martial arts, and we have the anti-aircraft one.
Anti-aircraft defense, the approach of aerial vehicles, no!
Visualized with this, they're going to shoot down drones. The mules. Every time I see this, I think of the poor mules. Well, it's not so bad because in times of war, when there's no food, you eat the mule. My God.
In a simple ambush, anti-aircraft defense, the approach of aerial vehicle, undetected. Look!
Shoot. And the mule runs away. I think Israel's drones wouldn't be able to detect these advanced systems from Cuba. It would be complicated for the IDF. I'm saying this because they've claimed Israel will join the United States to invade Cuba. That's their statement, not mine. And I think with the... I'm reading your comments. I think there's a wedding. I think there's a wedding. Me with Petro's daughter. Okay, James. Amen. I think so. There's a wedding. Do you know what's going on? This is the problem. This is the problem. The humiliation isn't that he was told no. The humiliation is that his idol, James, he has this photo. Abelardo's wife. She has this photo. That's the problem. That's what they've broken for her. But completely. Of course, James is gone, probably singing to her. Titi asked me. Petro's daughter asked me if I have a lot of photos. Thank you. And The Ring, when is it coming? That's another song we could also dedicate to Petro's daughter. And The Ring, when is it coming? Tremendous, 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 tremendous. It's a snub. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. We're live right now, folks, watching the chaos of this whole story. They're cornered in Colombia. Be careful. These guys are about to stage a coup. Definitely. They're likely working on it now. And figuring out what they can do and what they can't do. Family. Cuba. We'll see tomorrow how this turns out and how it goes on. Greetings to all our friends. Please write in the comments where you're connecting from, where you're visiting us from. Also here in the chat where you're visiting us from. Thank you for all those super chats. Super late in Spain. It was 3 in the morning. I'm going to sleep now. It could be. I mean, unless something happens. Thank you very much to the Lozanidas. They've left us a super chat here. I don't want to leave without mentioning it. Thank you very much. And tough days, Lorenzo. Cuba is the epicenter. Thanks to Abraham. Cayman, Cuba has them from the Sajid class. 136, 300 of them. We don't know. Thanks for the note. I'll check it out. Ricardo, blessings. Tyranny strategy to the end. Living under a crisis-ridden regime dehumanizes and limits freedom. Correct. Anna, thanks a lot. We hope it's true. Best regards and good luck. Hope it's real and we get to see it. In the original military strategies, except no imitations. Vic Sega, thank you very much. This reminds me when Argentina got vaccines from Russia. I don't know if you saw the Zoom call. It looked like a space launch. They're all the same. This is a disgrace. Family, see you next time. Next show. Here on Military Strategies.
Reading.